Hello and welcome to another episode of an experiment called Life with Alex McKenzie. That's me. As always, this episode is brought to you by Punchline Nutrition. Go and check out NeuroBoost. It's like a multivitamin for your brain. I take it before I do any podcasts, any writing, before I step on stage. Now, I can't guarantee that this will make you smarter, but I do guarantee it will make you less dumb. So go to Punchline Nutrition, check it out. Use the coupon code ATJ. You'll save yourself 25%. Also, my comedy tour, the Never Been Better tour, is on sale now. We are cruising along. I think we're about 10 shows in, and we have a lot more coming up. This tour is running all the way till June of 2026. So if you're in Canada, we are probably coming to your city. Go to alextellsjokes.com/live shows. Check it out. Grab some tickets. Now, for today's podcast, I am very excited. We have an amazing guest. This guy is an entrepreneur. He's an author. Please, everybody, welcome to the podcast, Scott Edwards. Scott, thanks for coming on, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited to be here with Alex McKenzie, the amazing guy that travels around Canada in a trailer. Oh, my God, do you believe it? He has this great podcast called Experiment called Life, because it really, who knows how this experiment will go. And I happen to be his lucky guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our Scott Edwards. Thank you. Thank you. Down and back. Settle down. Calm down. I'm so happy to be here. I got to ask you, though, Alex, what the hell am I doing on your podcast? You have had such amazing, you had Daniel Toussaint, who was like a real scientist. And then you had Dr. Christiana with her PhD and all her crap about, health, economics and stuff. You've had these really smart, college-educated people. I'm just a, seat of my pants, went as I went entrepreneur. I don't know if I fit on this amazing list of guests you've had.
Oh, buddy, I feel, I think you do very well. You're being very modest, or not modest, the unmodest. I don't know what you're doing, but you're not giving yourself enough credit here, Scotty, because you started doing, producing some show. What were you, 24 years old when you opened your first comedy club?
Yeah, I'm kind of a weird case, Alex. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 17, and I had a couple companies before I turned 24. And when I turned 24, I opened the U.S. This isn't Canada, but in U.S. the 12th full-time comedy club in the United States called Laughs Unlimited, all comedy showroom. And it turned out to be a huge success. I caught that wave of stand-up comedy when it really boomed in the mid-'80s and rode it into the '90s. And then I got smart and sold out of it in 2001. So 21 years in the stand-up comedy business. Alex, you're a stand-up comic. Have you been in the business 21 years?
I have not, dude. I have not. I'm just getting started. I'm just dipping my toes in here.
I don't know if we can handle that.
No, they're booing me. I've been booed off. I got booed off of my own podcast.
We just have to get you a little more experience in stage time. That's the secret to stand-up comedy and your amazing writing. Yeah, I know you're a proficient writer of comedy, and you bring all that to your amazing stage shows like a Happy Camper.
Yeah.
Could have gone wow, a really great comedy special or some sort of sex trade guy. I don't know. Happy Camper is great special. You did such a good job talking about your life and sharing.
That was my fallback. If I couldn't do comedy, it was a sex on wheels kind of thing going on here. I was like, I'll just get really jacked.
Right, Alex, if you have a trailer, you can kind of go a couple different ways.
I know, dude. You want to know something? Actually, this is actually, we talked a little bit about my dog Finley, right? How it was very unfortunate I had to put him down, not to kill the buzz. So everyone, I'm at peace with it, and just remember this is okay. But I'm talking about this in my new special, so the Never Been Better tour. I started writing about it, and at the time I was really worried about putting my dog down. I was like, am I doing it for the right reason? Like, you want to make sure you're doing it because they're at the end of their life and they're not enjoying it. And I was like, am I just putting him down because he's pissing and shitting himself all the time? So I made a decision. I was like, dude, if he's just pissing and shitting himself and he's still happy, like I owe it to this guy to clean up after him. So I made the decision. I was like, that's it. Finley's coming on the road. He's coming back in the RV. We're going on tour. So I polyed off this whole RV. I just took poly, taped it all off. I'm like, dude, you can piss and shit everywhere. We'll just shoot it out the door. It'll be fine. And then I got in the RV and I looked around and I was like, oh, you think it's hard getting a girl in here now? I was like, what is this, fucking Dexter on wheels? Like, dude, this looks like a mobile kill room right now. Like, you murderer. So, wow. Being in the van, there's a lot of different ways you can go with what you're trying to do out here, you know?
Well, there's a couple things. First off, we do want to celebrate the amazing life that you got to share with Finley. So, kids, what do you think? Good. Yeah, he was definitely something that brought a lot of joy and love to your life. So he
was the best, dude.
Finley. And I think it is difficult to make those tough decisions as a parent. I've had to put down a couple animals, pets of my kids in the past, and it's never easy. But you're doing what's best for them.
Right.
I think the only time I might have taken it too far is when I went ahead and had my parents put down because, it was easier. But just kidding, everybody. Just kidding. They're long past. But anyway,
that's another joke that I was going to do about one of the hardest things about putting my dog down was my mom. Like my mom takes everything so personal. So she's like, "Oh, what? Just because he's pissing himself, like you're going to get him killed?" She's like, "What are you going to do if I start pissing myself? You're going to take me somewhere and get me killed?"
Well, it's and I'm like. Or the cremation depends or cremation. It's like,
I know. So that's what I said. I was like, Mom, like if you start pissing yourself, I'm not going to take you somewhere and get you put down. Like I'll do it myself. All right.
Good answer, Alex. Well, yeah. I know that you're roaming British Columbia and Canada around there. Tell me about how you got started in stand-up comedy.
Right. Yeah. So my start in stand-up was it started with a podcast. I had a podcast me and my buddy did.
Wait a minute. You went from podcasting to comedy to podcasting?
Yes.
Everybody else goes from comedy to podcasting. You're doing it all wrong, Alex.
I know. Well, this was like probably, let me think. It probably was like 13, 14 years ago. I started a podcast with my buddy. And we were just doing a podcast, and we ended up interviewing a comic out in New York. What's his name? I forget now. Anyway, I mentioned to him on the air
about Alex, his great memory of his own show.
Of course, exactly. Just a beast of a memory over here.
Thanks to NeuroBoost.
Yes, exactly. You just got to get on this stuff, and trust me,
it'll help you.
You'll be as sharp as me with the memory.
Well, this podcast called An Experiment Called Life is a great title, and you've had some amazing guests. It's a little eclectic. You go around. But I thought what our connection was stand-up comedy. I'm assuming you hit a few open mics and realized you enjoyed it on stage?
Yeah, exactly. So what happened was I interviewed that comic from New York. I mentioned I love comedy, but I lived in a small town, and I didn't know anywhere to do it. And then some people from that town heard the podcast, and they're like, there's actually a group of like 4 or 5 of us that do this open mic at a pub every other week or whatever. So then they're like, get 5 minutes together and come down. So I was like, well, don't be a coward. You always said you wanted to do it. You got to do it. So I went down, I did my 5 minutes, and I always say it went as good as it could have went, like you got a few laughs. It was okay. You didn't get booed off. Like it was all right. And then we had once a month, there was a small place in town called Nancy O's, a little restaurant, indie pub kind of thing. And they would fly up a pro comic from Vancouver, BC every month. And we got to open for them. So I got to start opening for these pro comics, just doing 5 minutes. And I started meeting some people that are like, oh, this is their career. Like they're making a living doing this. And then we got our first full-time comedy club. So then now I got to start doing it every weekend and doing, 4 or 5 shows. And that's when you started to like really excel at it. And then, my original plan with An Experiment Called Life was just a video blog. Like I was just so tired of regular life that I was like, I'm done. I worked at a pulp mill. I was a power engineer and an instrument mechanic. I owned a home by the time I was 20, was paying a mortgage for over a decade. And I was like, felt like I was just working to pay bills. And so I was like, I'm done. I'm selling everything. I'm buying a van. I'm driving to Central America with my dog. We're going to go live on a beach and rent surfboards. And I'll create a video blog called An Experiment Called Life.
And here it is.
Yes. Well, then, but the thing that happened is then I started doing a bit of comedy over the winter, getting ready before I quit my job. And then it started going pretty good. And then I started doing a bit of like self-producing. Like, that's some questions I have about you. I'd love to ask you about producing, but I started doing that. I remember doing a show and making a bit of money. And I was like, hang on, like, you can make money? Like, and I was like, I think I could live off of this money if I didn't have all the bills. So then it was like, just move into the van, like have nothing. I'm like, this is enough for food and gas for sure. And then it just grew from
And
there.
for those listening, that's the important thing to know about stand-up comedy. It'll pay for gas and food. And that's
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. But then comedy was, I always say it was like the one hobby that I didn't want to quit. Like, it wasn't always this burning passion, which I think we get a bit of a mistake that we think like our passion is just like, given to us at birth and we're just meant and driven on this thing. But I found my passion for comedy grew as I spent more time with it. Like as I wrote more, I got better at writing, then I got better at performing. And then as I got better, I got more into it. And then it just started becoming like an identity. And yeah.
Well, that's the normal path and I've worked with literally thousands of comics and helped create some people that have gone on to really nice careers in show business. And it is about getting stage time, being prolific as a writer, challenging yourself to grow, but also you got to do the same material night after night, stage after stage, to take that lump of coal and kind of create a diamond of a comedy bit. And that takes time. And one of the things that a lot of young people don't understand is that there's a lot of work involved to be a stand-up comic. You may think you're funny, or your classmates may think you're funny in school, but going out and making a room full of strangers that paid money to be entertained, to make them laugh, to make them entertained, takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I think that was something that I got very lucky with coming from like an athletic background. I really saw hockey was always my dream. I wanted to be a professional hockey player. I'm Canadian. We come out with a pair of skates and a
What
hockey
a
stick.
surprise!
Yeah,
Hockey
right?
Canada. Wow. You wacky guy, you.
I know, right? I'm just so out of the mold here, just breaking new ground. But then that luckily an athletic pursuit dies pretty quick, right? Like it's like by the time you're 20, you have a really good idea of whether or not you're going somewhere. And then there were people that I saw from my age that made it to the NHL, and they weren't the guys that you would have thought would have made it at when our young years, in our early teenage years. But what they were the guys that stuck with it the longest and worked the hardest. So then that kind of like gave me a metric to show, okay, when I come into comedy, I'm going to make sure that I work hard at this every day and treat it almost like a professional athlete. Like I'm like every day, get up, write,
No, not
make sure you're
like.
writing.
Not like, Alex. You have to treat it like a career and a job and something that you really are passionate and want to do. And if you put the effort in, make yourself right, make yourself perform, whatever the circumstance, whatever the crowd, that's what's going to make you a strong stand-up comic.
Right.
So
Yeah.
no, I'm
No.
sorry, you said like an athlete. I mean, really, you have to work.
It's the
I'm taking
same.
the word like. I'm
Yeah.
actually listening to you, Alex, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
said like an athlete. No, it is like an Olympic athlete. You have to really go for it.
Yeah. And that's where I found like all of my success in comedy has come from just slugging away, putting in the hours and grinding. And I don't think I was there very like, even the funniness. People are like, oh, were you always funny? Are you born funny? And I'm like, you're okay. Like, you're kind of silly. But like, when you first get on stage, like it's awful. Like I was so bad, dude. Like I remember even when I first quit
Yeah,
my job,
been there.
I was like, I might have done this a little early. I probably should have waited a bit, but then I bought a bunch of like joke writing books. You know, a really good one is, I don't know if you know, do you know, what is Scott Dickers?
I do not, but I
He's,
imagine a guy named Dickers has a kind of a lean into comedy.
yeah, exactly. Right. So he was one of the founders of The Onion, you know, like the satirical news network.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he's one of the founders of that. So he has a really good book on like how to write funny when they talk about when they're editing jokes for The Onion and all this stuff. And it was really gave you a really good formula for it. But one of the things I had to learn was that was for written jokes, you know, like written on a piece of paper.
And it's different to perform it.
100%. And I found because like a big joke writing process is you write the joke and then you just start removing words, right? You take a word out and you're like, does it still work? Does it tighten it up?
You want to
And you
get it.
keep
Yeah, that's
good.
really good. You want to get the material, the concept across in the least amount of words with the best punch at the end. Do you have a pencil handy?
I got a pen.
Okay, write this down. Mike Lucas,
Yeah.
funnymuscle.com. Mike Lucas, Lukas, funnymuscle.com. This guy's written a couple really good books on the comedy industry. He's got a couple little courses, but if you're looking for somebody that's actually been on stage, and I mean, I'm sure the guy that writes for The Onion, Mr. Dickers, is really good and taught you a lot, but you might
Right.
be ready for that next level. But I saw your Happy Camper special, and you had a really good way with the audience. You share stories about your life and brought the humor out that way. Kind of a conversational comic. That's really good. Not joke, joke, joke. It was more what's funny in my life and the stories. And that is something that not everybody can do. And you did a really good job at it. And I hadn't seen what's the now better, what's the new
That
one?
I've never been better. But
Never
that's
been
not
better
out yet.
tour.
That's my live tour that I'm touring, building my new hour.
Yeah, never been better tour. So I'll be anxious to see that. But the Happy Camper was a great place to start.
Oh,
And you
thanks,
really
man.
have a comfortable way on stage about you, Alex. And I think what is interesting, much like your podcast experiment called Life, your podcast and your comedy is really about you.
Right.
You're interviewing other guests and stuff, but it's about how you're interacting with the world, what you're learning through this experiment, and you're bringing that not only to your podcast but to the stage, and you're doing it in a very good way. So congratulations, and I hope that you continue to find success with both.
Oh, thanks, Scott. I really appreciate it, man. I that means a lot to me taking the time to watch it. I do find that is what I'm trying to lean more towards now is the longer. Well, I think like number one about talk about my life. Thank you very much for that. I do think that's the most genuine way that you can get stuff across, you know, is like I can't really tell you how you're feeling about things, but I can tell you my experience through things. Um, what is it? Macklemore. He's one of my favorites, dude. And he's got a sweet line in a song. He says, life's a beautiful struggle. I record it and I hope it helps you maneuvering through yours. And I'm like, oh, that's like the artistic pursuit, you know? It's like he has
Well,
another.
yeah. I mean, I've worked with some of the best in the industry, and everybody's got a different hook when it comes to how they perform. You know, Jerry Seinfeld's observational comedy, Jay Leno
Mm,
is similar to you, but he doesn't talk about his own life, but he talks about life and finds the funny in it. But there were prop comics like Bruce Baum and Don Friesen, who's real high energy. Then you had Robin Williams, who was, you know, joke, 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 machine gun style. And, you know, he would say 100 funny things, and if 50 landed, he had the audience in the aisles. So there's a lot
right.
of different approaches to stand up comedy. And, you know, your way is the way that works for you, so you
Mm.
just have to keep working on that.
Yeah, I actually just bought a new book because I want to try and do more of the storytelling. I bought a book, Will Storr, The Art of Storytelling. So I've been reading that, trying to figure out what makes a good story, and then using, you know, comedy, the jokes. Because I think there's three stages to the artistic pursuit, and you might be able to help me with this. But my theory is number one, you're just trying to learn your craft, whatever it is. I always use as an example Eminem, the rapper, because I just know his work and it was very easy to see. But at the
Well,
very
you really
beginning,
brought the bar low there. So go ahead, Alex. Setting
so
the bar that low makes
just
that so much easier.
just do what Eminem did and you'll be
Right.
fine. Like, what do you not understand? Um, no, so step one is just learning your craft. You're basically just like, you look at a lot of comedians, myself was included, you're just trying to learn how to write a joke. Right. So it's like, it has nothing to do with you. Like my first jokes, I was like, in bed, I'm like a dirt bike, and like just doing these silly bits. And that is like, you look at Eminem's rapping career at the beginning, he was just rhyming. And that's what got him noticed. He was like, raw dog, get your arm gnawed off, drop the sawed off, beat you with a piece of a sawed off. Like it makes no sense. He's just rhyming crazy stuff. But then I think step two of the artistic pursuit, which I think is the funnest one, which is I think then you start taking your life and using your craft to dispense your life to people. So that's when, and I think this is where a lot of people start blowing up and you fall in love with them. So it's like Eminem started rapping about like, his wife and his struggles with his drug addict mom. And then, growing up and being a young father and struggling through that in Detroit. And that's where you start falling in love with the person because you start hearing about their life.
Well, let's be specific though, Alex. They're not talking about the successes in their life. They're talking about the challenges in their life that they're
Right.
able to turn into music. In the case of stand-up comedy, many entertainers have used the challenges, the hardships that they found in life and find the funny, right?
Right.
They're able to, similar to you, you find the funny in a story about the challenges in your life. In other
Right.
words, the comedy tragedy faces are there for a reason. Comedy's not far from tragedy, and we deal with tragedy with comedy. And it is important for all artists, whether it's a musician, an actor, or a stand-up comic, that you want to be able to take your craft and mold it with the experiences you've had in your life. I mean, your podcast, The Experiment Called Life, is a great example of we go through these different things. Many of them are easy and successful, but many more are challenging, hard, and beat us up, similar to losing Finley. These
Right.
things are really hard and challenging now because it's only been a month, but a while from now, you're going to find the funny because it'll help you deal with that loss and with that emotional change. And when you find the funny and then you share it with an audience, then you're connecting because they've all lost a loved one or a pet or something. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? You're taking
Yeah.
bad. I know you don't feel that way right now, but
Right.
you're going to find a way to deal with losing this loved one with with humor. It
Yeah,
takes
of course.
time.
Yeah.
Time heals all wounds, but you have to find the funny. You have to uh, engage your own emotions because that's how we deal with tragedy. Is we
Yep.
have, and that's one of the great gifts of stand-up comedy. If you ever go and see a professional comic and they're talking about the challenges of dealing with the government or money or the passing of parents or being evicted from their home or something, what works for them is that they found the funny, share that tragedy in a humorous way with a bunch of strangers, and
Yeah.
somehow that helps both the entertainer and the audience get through these tough times.
Right. I guess it's a feeling of not being so alone, right? Or being understood. You're like, oh, I've been through those hardships. I
Right, you're not
understand
the
what they're
only
going
one.
through.
Yeah, you're not
And
the only
yeah,
one to lose a loving pet. You're not,
yeah,
we're not the only ones going through a tough financial time. We're not the only ones that have lost a job, or we're
yeah.
not the only ones that are really bad dressers. We've all been through that, right? So going out and finding the funny and sharing it with a group of strangers who in their own way have been through tough times helps you engage with them, helps you connect with them. And that's what makes a successful stand-up comic or performer. Really, it could be a singer, actor, anybody. It's what they bring to the stage, what they bring to the audience. And it's always based on tragedy. And then in our case, in the comedy world, we make it comedic. An
Right.
artist, a singer, songwriter, does it in song, right? An actor does it through his emotions on the screen. So
Right.
it's an interesting thing, and I think that you're finding that out in this uh, travel trailer through Canada. You're figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Slowly, one show at a time here. Getting a little bit funnier every day.
Well, that's the goal. As long as you're improving on yourself and you're building on your material, keep the good ones, keep the gems that you honed and work each and every time, and then each time build on it. So, for those of you that are want stand-up comedy 101, you try to write your first 3 minutes and you work that 3 minutes to death. And so it's perfect. Then you add another 3 minutes, right? And 3 minutes on stage, as you know, Alex, is a long time.
Right.
So, once you're, a year later, you might still be using that first and second 3 minutes, but you keep building on it. And the goal for any performer is to get to maybe an hour of material. Now, somebody like Robin Williams could easily do 2 or 3 hours, literally. I mean, he did an hour and a half on my stage. Jay
Yeah.
Leno did 2 hours in a concert I did once. So you keep building on it. You keep finding ways to take this material and bring it forward each time, enhancing it with additional material, and that's what makes you a professional stand-up comic.
I always found what was the way it was described to me that was really good was making comedy is like making a samurai sword. Have you ever heard that analogy?
No, but I know
Okay.
how a samurai sword is made, so I get it.
Yeah, so like you pound it flat and then you fold it over, then you pound it flat, then you fold it over. So they're like, like get yourself up to, say whatever, 5 minutes, and then it's like fold it over back into 2.5 of like really tight, good stuff. And then you stretch it back out, maybe go 6 minutes, then fold it over to three, and then stretch it out and keep doing that
That's a
until you
good
have,
analogy, Alex.
yeah.
I'm really surprised that came out of that brain. That's a really good one. Good
That's
job.
neuro boost, actually. That's you take that and the ideas. I don't know if I solved the Rubik's cube while we were
Oh
talking. You
my
probably
God.
didn't even notice, but
I have one of those too, Alex, but I bought it already finished.
oh, nice,
Well, I didn't
nice.
have the neuro boost, right? I didn't know about that
Yeah,
too.
we'll get you sorted after this. Don't worry, we'll get you all boosted up. You'll be solving Rubik's cubes in no time.
It's amazing. So,
Yeah.
I totally lost track. I'm your guest. Any questions for me?
Yes, I would love. So, what's your favorite non-domestic animal, Scott?
Well, I like the cow because it has two stomachs, and they can't run because they got these udder bag things. Whoa!
No, I would love. I mean, I've got so many questions about even starting the comedy club, but like event production. So, when you were producing, did you scale outside of your comedy clubs? Did you ever get into doing like uh like
Well,
big theater production? Did you do concerts like arenas, anything like that?
yes, I did a couple. I did 5 outdoor concerts. One had 12,000 people. Uh,
Holy cow.
the smallest had 6,000. I did several big, large concerts with Jerry Seinfeld, Jay Leno, Yakov Smirnoff, Dana Carvey, and those were 2,400 seaters, sold out each and every one of them. I also produced 3 TV series, and I've had a lot of production experience. I've been on stage probably more than most people. I was the host and MC. By the way, the name of my podcast, Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. On
Yeah.
stage each and every night introducing people, but I'm not a stand-up comic. Some people say I can be funny, and I did pretty good as a house MC, but I'm a producer at heart.
Right.
What a producer is, for those who don't understand, is that we risk our money and put together an event. It could be any kind of event. In my case, it was always stand-up comedy shows. And I bring in the talent, I get the location, I make sure there's proper sound, proper lighting. Then I have to sell the tickets, I have to do the marketing. It's a business. And that's where my two other companies and the starting of the comedy clubs, I went on to own a travel agency and a small insurance brokerage. I owned a submarine. I had a beach shack in Hawaii. Um, I,
Okay.
I'm a businessman.
I
And
like you went
when,
into the submarine.
yeah,
That's good.
when you're a comedy producer, what that means is you're the business side of it. So, like I was explaining, I started a comedy club when I was 24. Well, it's more than just bringing in comics and hoping an audience shows up. When you have a comedy club, you have to own a bar. You have to
Right.
sell food, so it's a restaurant. You have to market. You have to sell tickets at the door, and then you have to make the shows professionally produced with audio and lighting and staging so that you give the entertainer, whatever it is, a comic, a magician, a juggler, ventriloquist, the best position to entertain an audience you hope shows up and pays
Right.
you. That's the return. Sorry,
Right.
I put encapsulated the business side of being a producer and in stand-up comedy in about 2 minutes there. Sorry.
No, that's great. That's all really good information. When was the last time you produced a live show?
About 2 weeks ago. I still do.
Okay. Oh, you still do them.
Oh, I still do them. Yeah,
Okay.
I
Then this is a
love.
very good question that I have then, because I look at like I'm a fully independent artist, so I self-produce all of my shows. So I just rent venues, exactly like you would know. I just rent the venue, I put together a marketing campaign, graphics kit, and then I just hope that I sell more tickets than it costs me to put the show on. And then
That's a producer.
yeah, exactly. And then comedy was very scalable because I started out in pubs and bars, and then I just got into community halls and then theaters, and I've done two arenas now. Um, but I always look at it and I go, there was no way that I could do what I do now 20 years ago, even. Like, how big has the landscape changed? Because everything now is digital. Like, I can just go online, I can find the venues, I can send them an email, they can email me a contract, I can get that signed digitally. All the Facebook, all the marketing I can do through Facebook ads or Meta. What what is the biggest changes in the industry that you've seen over
Well,
20 years?
that's a huge question with a huge answer because when I started in 1980, yes, I'm
Yeah.
long before you were born. I'm an older guy. There was no internet, there was no computers, so everything was, the marketing was doing up flyers and putting them around town.
How
And
hard was that? Did you have to go and do that by hand? Do you have
yeah,
to? You would find people. You would just be out on the street, just flyering
oh
people
yeah.
like, "Hey, come to my show."
I always carried 2-for-1 tickets in my pocket. I passed them out anywhere I went, trying to get butts in the seats.
Yeah.
Um, I had to, my very first club, I negotiated with a restaurant to use their banquet room to produce shows
Right.
and let them get the food and drink money. And I got the door money, but they didn't charge me any rent because they
Yeah.
were making money off the food and drink. So, just like you, I started with a banquet room in a restaurant. Then I made enough money to build my own club. And then eventually I had 3 clubs in Northern California and ran that chain of comedy clubs for 21 years and got a chance again. I lucked out. I got into it as I've name dropped. I worked with Dana Carvey and Harry Anderson, Jerry Seinfeld, Jay Leno, Bob Saget, Gary Shandling. I can go on and on,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they were not famous at the time. They were just starting their careers, and
Yeah.
I gave them kind of a foothold to that led to their success. It was a stepping stone to their success was working my clubs. Yakov Smirnoff, famous Russian comic, it goes on and on. But the exciting part was being there in the birth of stand-up comedy as an acceptable art form. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody that's older than me, stand-up comedy was out there, but it was always like the entertainment between jazz bands or between strippers at a club.
Yeah. It was like a sideshow, right? Like I heard them
Right.
talk about that.
There was
Yeah.
no comedy clubs per se. When I opened, yeah, there was the Improv in New York and LA. There was the Comedy Store. a punchline in San Francisco, but there was 11 in the whole country. I was number 12. Now that's in
Yeah.
1980. It exploded by 1985. All the discos of the 70s became comedy clubs. And much like Starbucks, it went from being just a few comedy clubs around the country to two or three in every town. So it really exploded, and I got to kind of ride that wave. I was very lucky and blessed.
Yeah, I've heard there was like a big comedy boom in the 80s, I guess is when it was, right?
Yeah,
Or
it
early
really hit its
90s
peak.
even or
Well, it hit its peak in 85 and 86, and then they started doing it on TV at evening at the Improv and live at the Comedy Store. And that kind of killed the flow because people could sit on their ass on their couch and watch comedy. But
rather than come down to the club.
right, come to the
Well,
club. So we had to work a little harder to get butts in the seats. But live comedy is always much better than the two-dimensional television comedy.
oh, insane. Yeah. That I think everything live is like that, you know, like even if you go watch a sporting event or anything, it's like you watch on the TV, it's pretty cool, but then when you get in there, you're like, "Oh, this is way better. This is how it's meant to be consumed." Like stand-up
Well, you
comedy.
get that immediate reaction from the audience is kind of the risk reward of stand-up comedy is that you tell a joke or a story that you wrote, you don't know what's going to happen, and if the audience responds in a positive way, that's your reward, and that
Right.
feels so good. It gets your endorphins going. It's kind of like a drug, and once you get that first laugh, you just don't want to stop. You want to keep getting laughter from people because it's laughter is kind of like the other L word, love. You're getting it from a room full of strangers.
Yeah, that's definitely. That's what I always say that Finley taught me is if you can make people laugh and you give them love, you'll never have to worry about money in your life, you know?
There you go.
And
Love
that's
what you do, and it'll take care of you.
yeah. Here's a question I have, I guess. So I've been producing now for I guess 6 years. And you know, I still don't think I have any idea what makes a successful show and what doesn't. Like, you know, I'll do the same marketing campaigns, I'll do the same everything, and one show will sell 500 tickets, the other one sells 100. I'm like, how is this just depending on the city? Is it just a different, you know, these people over here don't care for comedy as much, these people like going out? Is it like, what do you think makes a successful show?
Well, it's a lot like I ended up owning several restaurants. I had a couple art galleries, and much like other small brick and mortar businesses, the first thing you have to keep in mind is location, location, location. Is it a location that people are used to going to? Do they know where it is? Do they understand it's going to be a professional setup and a professional produced show? Then
Right,
it's timing, in that you have to make sure that you're hitting the time of week, the day, and the time that fits into their schedule. And then, of course, it falls back on marketing. In me as a producer, I also have to make sure I have a quality entertainment setup. I always did three-act shows, usually a
yeah,
comic, a magician, and then a closing comic. But for you, since you're self-producing, you have your show, you know what you're going to do. So you've taken that risk off the table. You just need to focus on the location, the timing, the marketing, and then it comes down to things like, what are you going to charge? You know, a lot of
right,
people will charge less money, get more butts in the seats, but that's if you're selling food and alcohol. If you're not selling food and alcohol and you're in a nice theater, you can charge more because you're not going to make money off the side stuff, right? So
right,
you have to work it that way. My recommendation to you is get away from the arenas. You want to stick with theaters and things that are like 100 to 400 seats, because that's one, it's going to be easier to fill. A full room is so much better than a not unfull room,
right.
and because you get the energy, the audience builds up. And I built three or four comedy clubs in my time. I always shot for 200 seats.
Yeah,
Now, some people think 400 is better, but I think 200 is easy to sell, easy to fill. And once you get that room full and you have it with a low ceiling, that's another thing. In arena,
yes,
your
yeah,
audio gets lost in the
yeah,
open roof, right? But you want something with a low ceiling because that captures not only your voice, but the audience. It comes at you. and then it bounces off the back wall and goes back at them, and that builds the momentum and the energy in the show. So
Oh,
I would
big
go
time.
to smaller rooms more often, low ceilings, and then just make sure you have professional lights and sound. I mean, it's so funny how many times I've been approached by people, churches and organizations and corporate, and they don't understand that you have to have good lighting. They don't
Right.
understand that you have to have good audio, or that people will not hear the
Yeah,
entertainment.
the sound is the biggest. Yeah, it's the
Right,
biggest hurdle there. Like if there's no sound, you got no show.
right,
And
right.
then
You
yeah,
need
you want in a dark room, ideally, right? Like as dark as
no
possible.
lights if you can. You need a good riser. A lot of times they'll go, "Oh, comic, you just go stand in the corner and do your material." They go, no, I got to have a sense of control of the room. I need a
Right.
little bit of a riser. 2 feet is good, but even 6 inches gives you some control over the space. Good
Yeah.
sound, because that's how you control the room, and
Yeah.
lighting because you want the focus on you,
Yeah.
right? You, the entertainer, and the audience will just naturally, through their life's experience, understand that if someone's got a microphone and they're in the light and they're on a stage, wow, that's my focus.
Right. This is what I'm supposed to pay attention to.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. It's all good stuff. That's all I was told is like you want like a shoebox, ideally, like a rectangle. And then you put the stage on the long wall so that you're closer to everyone rather than because some rooms I've seen set up and they're like a Tetris piece. They're like long and narrow, and you're at one end of but the back audience is so far from you. They're so disengaged from the show.
Well, one of the other problems with corporates and doing outside gigs is that they want to put a dance floor. They put this moat. I call it a
Yes.
moat of big space
Yes. In
between you and the
between.
audience. You
Yeah.
want the audience within 5, 10 feet of the stage, because you want to be able to see them in the face, which isn't easy with the lights on you.
Yeah.
You can't even see the people in the back, but you want to see the faces of at least the first few rows so that they're
Yeah.
part of the experience, right?
Yeah, definitely. So what is now when you're looking for talent, what are you looking for when you're booking acts?
Well, I'm kind of done, at this point in my life. I'm still producing fundraisers for charities,
Okay.
usually about 4 a year, not a lot, but I don't go out and look for talent anymore. I will say that for the first 20 years when I owned the clubs, I would go to other clubs and they would do showcases for me, and I would take copious notes and decide who I thought would fit my audience. And what was interesting, I'm from Sacramento, California. My clubs were all in this area, and everybody in this area was stuck with my sense of humor. In other words, if I saw somebody that other people might think is funny, but they're really too caustic, or so that you can relate to New York, right? Too
Right. Yeah,
abrasive,
ba-bang,
and I
ba-bang.
didn't
Yeah, yeah.
think they would go with my audience, I wouldn't book them. They might be funny in New York. That doesn't
Right.
mean they're going to work in Sacramento, right?
Right.
So I used my sense of humor, my taste in comedy, and then I started. I would go out and showcase talent, and then connect with the people I thought could do it. And then I usually made them do. They would, well, back in my day, they would send me a VHS tape. These were these that were in a plastic box, and I would have stacks and stacks of them. And
I think
but
you got some behind you there, don't you?
yeah,
Is that what,
well, oh yeah, I do.
yeah.
Lots of stuff. But the point was you have to see somebody in front of a live audience first. You can't just go off the resume. Or these days, people do these. I got a great story, Alex. Heard a story where some corporation paid some guy $10,000 because he had like 500,000 followers, and he had like 6 really great TikTok videos that were
Right.
maybe a minute each. And because he had all these followers, and these 6 TikTok bits were so funny, they paid him 10,000. They brought the guy out, brought in this big audience of their employees, and the guy was not a professional stand-up comic. He had
Right.
60-second bits that he tried to do on a live stage, which is different
Right.
than video.
Oh,
And
big time.
they wanted an hour show, and this guy couldn't do 5 minutes. So, you can't go off of what you might see on TikTok or the internet, or these short 30, 60-second things. They might be funny. I'm not taking away from the fact
Of
that they can
course.
be funny, but that's way different than a professional stand-up comedy.
And getting
And,
on stage, yeah.
right, and worked his material and honed it and got it down to, like you said, the shortest amount of words to get a reaction from the audience.
Yeah. So when you what have you seen is the biggest factor in people who have a very successful career and those that don't? Like when you've seen comedians like, oh, this guy's really funny. But I imagine you've seen some people make some big breakthroughs in comedy where you're like you said, Jerry Seinfeld and those kind of guys weren't that big when they started and they got through. What do you think made people get through to that upper level?
It's dumb luck in most
Yeah,
cases. I know a lot of really funny people, Don Freeze and Steve Bruner, Mark Yaffe. I can go on and on that had a great Tim Bedore, life's career in stand-up comedy, made a lot of money, did really well. Bruce Baum, Mark Schiff, but they were never famous. It
right,
only a few get that what I call the golden ticket and become famous. In the case of my generation, if you had a good Johnny Carson set on the Tonight Show,
right.
you could pretty much guarantee getting a sitcom or a special down the road. That's how Jerry Seinfeld, Gary Shandling, Ray Romano, many people got their start. Dana Carvey, for example, who's a impressionist, musician, and great stand-up comedy and does great characters. I was sitting, he was working my club regularly. It was just new coming out of San Francisco. And we're sitting in a jacuzzi with a couple young ladies late one night. And he had just gotten a phone call from Lorne Michaels of
Okay.
Saturday Night Live and said, "Hey, we want you to showcase on Monday in New York." And he was excited and nervous because he'd been a comic on my stage in other Northern California clubs, but he'd never done any TV. And uh, but really excited at this opportunity. Right after working my club, he flew out to New York, did the showcase, got the gig, and became famous on Saturday Night Live doing things like the Church Lady and Hans and Franz and those characters
Yeah.
on Saturday Night Live. But it just happened that Lorne Michaels had heard about him, called him up and said, "Hey, come and do a showcase," And I'm sure that happened to 1,000 people that didn't get on the show, but he did
Right.
get on the show. Kevin Nealon was another one that was working for me and ended up on Saturday Night Live, along with many others, actually. But those two come to mind. But it is really the luck of the draw in some cases. And you always have to have a talent. But like I was explaining, there's a lot of comics, literally thousands, that are really funny, had a great life and career in comedy entertainment, and are not famous.
Yeah, that was one of the first observations I had when I started going to live shows. Like I mentioned at that Nancy O's restaurant in my hometown that would bring in a pro comic. I watched them and I was like, dude, these people are as funny as anyone I've ever seen on TV. And I was like, wow. And it introduced me to because at that time I only knew that stand-ups were like, these big famous characters, just a few of them. But then I
Right.
started meeting all these other people and I was like, oh, there's like different levels to this. And these people are, and like I said,
And
just as, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and they approach comedy all different ways.
Yeah.
Bobcat Goldthwait is different than Ray Romano, who's different from Bobby Slayton, who's different from Don Friesen or Yakov Smirnoff. They all are funny, but they share their humor using their hook or their uh, presentation style to an audience. And they can all be amazingly funny, but you haven't heard of most of them. I
Yeah.
mean, I come from the generation where Yakov Smirnoff, who had just come over from Russia, worked my club when he barely spoke English and was a great stage comic. He ended up being a speech writer for Ronald Reagan. He
Oh, wow.
did some big shows, had his own TV specials and shows. But now a lot of people don't know the name Yakov Smirnoff, but he was the first Russian stand-up comic, and now he has his own theater in Branson, Missouri. So, he's famous in Branson, and he was famous in the 80s and early 90s, but people don't really remember the name as much. Harry Anderson, who was on Cheers and Night Court, famous guy, a celebrity, made tons of money, But if you go up to anybody under 50 and say, "Hey, do you remember Harry Anderson?"
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, famous comic magician and circus freak. Yeah, no. Uh,
Yeah.
so it is generational, was my point, is that the
Right.
people I worked with were huge in the 80s and 90s, but now in 2025, most of those people's names have faded into history. The two exceptions are Jerry Seinfeld and Jay Leno. And the reason is, even though they're richer than God, is they're still outperforming each and every week. Why? Because they love stand-up comedy. They love engaging with an audience. They love writing comedy, and they've continued to do so for 30, 40 years.
Yeah, which is very impressive. It's my goal. That's my hopes. I hope I never stop doing this, you know? That's one
Me,
of my favorite things
I,
is
I
there's
think we need to realize, Alex, that your goal is a bigger trailer. Woo!
I think I might just add an addition, you know? I might just hook a trailer onto the back and it'll be
There
like
you
an
go.
addition and then I
Or
drag that around.
maybe you can build up, right? It'll be the first two-story trailer going down the street.
I could do that for sure. I think we got plenty of room up there to go a little taller. Just clip a bridge or something that'll get me on the news. That'll help a ton. Well, Scott, before I let you go, one question I always like to ask everybody, this is more of like just a philosophical thing that I've kind of found in life is,
Should I put it on my brain hat?
yes, put on your thinking, take your neuro boost.
Good
What,
plug.
what is, what is one thing that you used to believe to be true that you no longer do?
What's the one thing
It
I
doesn't have
used
to be one thing. There's
to
probably multiple things. Yeah. So something you
be
used to
true?
believe to be true that you no longer do. To give you an example, one I say for myself is that I used to believe that you had to suffer in order to have success. And I no longer believe that. I think you can have a very fun, upbeat atmosphere. And as long as you're having fun, I think that'll lead to success. Before I thought I had to be like in my trailer hating this, being like, work harder to get anywhere. But anyway, so yeah.
Well, I think as an entrepreneur, you have to learn early on that failures are the stepping stones to success, and that you do have to. I kind of am disagreeing with you. I think you do have
But
to fail to experience and appreciate success. I think that one of the things I feared as a young man was that my whole life was based on my financial success and my financial position in life. But I've been pretty rich a couple times. I've been bankrupt a couple times, and I have found at my elderly age now that as long as I kept moving forward and kept
mhm.
trying things and kept working, that all the stress about not having enough money didn't matter because it didn't change anything. Stressing about something doesn't fix it. So I think as a young man, I worried that I would, I don't know, end up dead in Potter's Field. When the reality is, whether you're making bank or you're going bankrupt, you can survive it and get through it.
Right. That's very good. Yeah. I like I've heard that entrepreneurial phase where they say you want to be wrong as fast as possible. Right. So they're like
Well,
fail as quick as you can. So
it is, there's some truth to the fact that you're not going to be a good comic until you bomb a couple times, right? You're not going to be a good podcaster until you have that rough guest that makes you really work for the interview, or you're not going to be. I always used to say you're not a successful entrepreneur until you've been sued a few times, you've been bankrupt, and
yeah.
you've had those challenges that we all have with employees and comics and whatever. It's all part of the process. It's all part of the journey to
Right.
success. Is all the ups and downs. Nobody's got a straight line. It's up and down in life, and it whether you're uh, a laborer that builds buildings or does plumbing, or you're a professional entertainer. There's always going to be highs and lows, and you just have to be strong and have the fortitude to get through the lows, and you'll make it to the highs.
Yeah, just keep moving forward. What is that? Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming, right?
Just keep swimming. Just keep
Just keep
swimming.
swimming. Yeah, they nailed it. All right, Scott, where can people find you if they want to go check out your stuff, keep up to date with you? What's the best way to do that?
Well, Alex McKenzie, thank you for asking that question. First off, I have a very successful audio podcast. It's been on for over 6 years, has over 500,000 downloads. It's called Standup Comedy. Your host and MC, be sure to check it out. There's interviews of the famous and not so famous when it comes to stand-up comedy and lots of great comedy material. My newest adventure, I went video just recently. I started in February with a new video podcast called Tag Team Talent Podcast. That's Tag Team Talent Podcast. And you can learn more at the website, tagteamtalentsearch.com, tagteamtalentsearch.com. And what it is we're showcasing 3 videos each and every week. The show takes about 15 minutes. The videos are only 3 minutes long. And we're showcasing talent from around the world. So it can be singing, dancing, lots of comedy, magic, ventriloquism, a little bit of everything. And it's called Tag Team because it's me and a co-host each and every week.
Nice.
And I have a different co-host each week. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been on since February. Are you sitting down, Alex?
I am.
It's already had over 400,000 views since February. It's just kicking ass.
Oh, that's awesome.
Excited. What do you
Dude.
guys think? Is that a good thing? Yes, I think
The kids love it. The kids love it.
Kids love it. And so those are my 2 podcast projects. I still produce shows. And if you want to learn more about me, my comedy course, my books, I've written 3 books. Go to Stand-Up Comedy Podcast Network.com, the Stand-Up Comedy Podcast Network.com. It's a free app on all Android and Apple phones, and there you'll find a whole bunch of podcasts. You'll find my books, my comedy course, some great pictures of famous people, and lots of fun stuff. And it's been such a pleasure being on the Experiment Called Life podcast, and I've been your guest, Scott Edwards. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Well, we're going to end this